Particular segment of 360 brake installation and usage, we're going to talk a lot about how the brake gets mounted to your billet wheel. Please understand that these parts have already been previously mocked up for this installation, so many measurements have already been done, but I do want to refer to the specific parts. This particular wheel has about a 500 thousandths center thickness. It's important to know that to find the center of your forks and work from one side or the other to make sure that your wheel ends up in the middle. We know that the 360 brake is 2.625 inches from the outer caliper to where it sits flat against your wheel or against a wheel spacer. And that's important to use something to set the size of where the center of the brake is going to fit. In this case, since it's a front wheel, there is no drive hub. We want to have the caliper face sit no closer than 1/8 of an inch to the inner fork and no further away than 1/4 inch. Then we will start working from that side over to determine how thick the spacers need to be. Now these parts might need to be machined by you in order to make the wheel end up in the center of your front forks. If this was a rear installation, the drive side will set the center of your wheel, and then the spacer for the other side will be made for the brake, knowing that there's enough total distance. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. The first thing to note is what side is the brake going to mount on. The brake is going to be on the left side of this wheel, so we want to make sure that we have the tire rotation go in the correct direction. Because we know that now and it's sitting correctly, the spacer that we're going to utilize for the right-hand side of this wheel is a billet aluminum spacer that is going to have a bearing pushed into the outside of it. It is important that we have our bearings as wide as possible. So the terms we're going to refer to is a hub spacer or an axle spacer. You can use narrower hubs, but if you do that, it means that the bearings will be closer together. So we like wider hubs and narrower spacers at the end of the installation. The other thing that's going to be important is to note what size bearings you have. The 360 brake is sold standard with a 1-inch inside bearing diameter. We also offer what we call top hat bushings that changes that size to change to your axle. So on this installation, we're going to do a 3/4 inch axle. We take the 1-inch brake, we put in a top hat bushing, now making that 3/4 inch. On the opposite side, we'll essentially do the same thing and put in a bushing, changing that to 3/4 of an inch. Or it could be done with a 1-inch. It doesn't matter for this operation. The Victory happens to be a 20mm axle, in which case we make a 20mm top hat bushing, changing the size of that bearing from a 1-inch ID to 20mm. The first thing you'll need to do after having made those measurements is take the spacer on the right-hand side, place it underneath the wheel, or assemble this upright, it's up to you, and make sure the bolt hole patterns align. There's an installation guide on our website explaining how to come up with the bolt hole diameter that you'll need for the brake. This bolt hole diameter is what we're referring to in the wheel. This happens to be a 3.25 inch diameter using a 7/16 inch bolt. Our brake is built to be universal. The top hat has slots. For that, we offer different, what we refer to as pills. In your measurement guide, there's also a pill measurement that will tell you what size pill you need in order to make this hat fit your wheel. We know it's a 3.25 by 7/16, and this is called a clear pill. So plain pill will be dropping the bolt through the pill to thread through the wheel into the spacer on the other side. In other applications, the bolts will come from the opposite side and thread into the pill. And again, that is in our installation guide and again in our parts list. Now that we have the hub spacer located underneath the wheel and those holes aligned, what the next piece would be to do is to get this side of the brake the right distance. In this case, we needed to machine a billet aluminum spacer. This can be done in chrome, this can be done in polished or anodized, whatever fits your particular installation. This happens to be a very plain spacer, flat-sided, made very simply at any machine shop. Spacers can become pretty intricate. This is a chrome spacer that has a contour on it, and so custom builders are often designing their own spacers. We know that this spacer needs to have the same bolt hole pattern as that 3.25 inch bolt circle, and so we've done that. And we also use a centering hub in order to make this hub centric. By doing that, we've matched the inside of the wheel to this diameter for the brake purpose so that the hub fits down snugly into its hole and isn't able to move left or right. As the same, we want to have the brake centered onto that. So from the center diameter, we've machined an opening for the brake to fit down inside of that and locate directly over those holes using the proper pills to give us our bolt diameter center.